Okay, my name's Evan Scheibler for CG Toots Plus, and in this tutorial we're going to take a look at changing climates. And specifically what we're going to do is look at a kind of a cartoony scene that you've probably already seen in the tutorial preview. So here I have it pulled up here in my QuickTime player. I'll play through it a couple times, kind of describe what's going on, and then we'll dive right into this scene. This will be also, if you watch the other Dreamscape tutorial, this is going to be a really good follow-up tutorial for that. It wasn't meant to be that, but it just so happens that it will work for that as well. So if you learned from that tutorial and you want to go a bit further and deeper into Dreamscape, this is hopefully going to help you out a little bit. As most of this scene was created in Dreamscape, except for obviously the animations that you saw. So let's take a look at this. I'll kind of describe what we have going on here, and then we'll start. Okay, so it's obvious what's happening. You can see we've got the iceberg morphing into kind of a sandy-looking terrain. And then if you watch how the palm trees are animated, it's classic squash and stretch. Cartoony-like animation, which we'll go into that. Really simple to do. Probably the only tricky part there was the stumps, getting them to stay in the same place. I hand animated it, but you could parent them to the world and get the same result. But anyway, you can see we've got a little water animation. The clouds kind of change. Hammock drops from the sky. I was kind of pressed for time. I was going to add a little dust cloud when the hammock hits, but didn't have the time to render that much. This alone took about 6 minutes each frame at 320 by 240 resolution. So the water and the blurred reflections and refractions really hit the render time. So alright, so that's what we've got. So let's jump right to it here. This is the scene as it looks in Max. There's a few things going on. This is at frame 1, so you can see I've got my Dreamscape water sea surface here, set up to be an adaptive mesh with this camera picked, and then right here we've got that, and then this little daemon here is just a simple waves Dreamscape daemon. It just kind of controls the animation of the waves. Didn't really use it too much actually in this scene. And a couple other things that we're going to go into here, some really cool techniques that you'll be able to use, like my material, you'll see. I actually used a single material for this and animated it, so you'll see, we'll go into that and just all these different things. So what I'm going to do actually is just start right from scratch. So I'm going to reset my scene. Scene has been saved. No, don't save the changes. Do you really want to reset? Yes, I do. Okay, so we start with just a blank max. I'm going to Alt-W to bring up this maximized viewport. Now, first thing we have to do is create our terrain. Now, like the last Dreamscape tutorial went into, it's a fairly simple process, but the only difference is in this one, we're going to use a displacement map, and then we're going to hand animate that terrain as a editable poly. So let's first thing we'll come and we'll create. We'll go to our Dreamscape objects in our create panel and we'll choose Terra, and we'll just drag this out right now, just a bit bigger than the grid, and I'll come to my top view, and that should be a good size. We're again working with a plugin that uses at least its own unit system. You can set it up to use, I think, real world units. I never do, but I think you can with Dreamscape. So this is going to have to be a fairly large scene. You can see I've made the terrain fairly large. So let's zero this out on X and Y so we can get it in the middle here. And then so it's bigger, pretty big, and we want it to be that way, so when we get the waves in there, we don't have to do something that's going to give us a lot of trouble. We'll go into that, exactly what it is with the sea surface, when we get to that point, because a lot of people, me especially, when I first started working with Dreamscape, I fell into this error where I would always get artifacting and color banding and odd looking stretching in my horizon, and I'll show you why that is when we get to that point. So right now what I'm going to do is come into my edit panel with my Dreamscape object selected, and I'm going to hit render as geometry. That way it's just going to otherwise it doesn't render, but if I hit render as geometry, it makes that renderable as a plane. So from this point, what I'm going to do is change my render segments to about I'd say right now 85. We'll probably tweak that a little bit more later. So now I'm going to hit this button, Open Editor, and this brings this up. And right off the bat, you see Displacement Map. Now, I think this was covered in the other Dreamscape tutorial. I have to admit, I didn't really watch it. So if I'm repeating anything that was in there, just bear with me until we get to the new stuff. Okay, so I'm going to hit None right here. And then I'm going to bring this up, make it a little smaller here so you can see it. And then here I have two different displacement maps that I tried. This, you can see how a displacement map works. It's pretty straightforward here. What's white it's kind of like a height field terrain. In fact, that's I think exactly what it is. But in a displacement map, the white will displace and the black will not, and then any level of gray in between will displace it to a certain degree. So what we have here is, you can see in this one what'll happen is if we put this displacement map in there, it's going to be kind of a uniform displacement all throughout the grid, but we don't want that. I want it to kind of be a mountainous looking terrain with kind of bumped up in the middle but yet flat, or not necessarily flat but lower around the edges. So you can see that this one will give us the desired effect here. So I'm going to use this Iceberg 2 here. And I just wanted to show you that so you can kind of get an idea, if you don't know already, for how displacement mapping works. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to choose bitmap for my displacement, and then I'm going to navigate to my displacement map. And I'm going to choose Iceberg 2, which is this one here. Okay, and that's going to put it there. Now you can see automatically in real time what happens is we get an interactive update in our mesh. So that's looking pretty good. Now obviously we're going to have to do some tweaking. Like, we have some funny things in here. I just found this on Google Images. I'm not sure what this is. So we can come in here and we can choose like height paint, generate grid. Forgot to do that. Okay, and we can just come in here and kind of paint this away a little bit, maybe. That way we don't have that funny thing in there. And kind of do it over here too. And you can see you get interactive updates in the viewport, so that's always good. And you could paint one of these yourselves, but it's just sometimes a little easier to work with a displacement map like this. So that looks good. So we'll just close out of this, and you can see that this is renderable. It comes up in our view, in our render view, very nicely. Now the render segments obviously is exactly what it says. Now 85 looks good for what we have. Let me lower it just for demonstration purposes. If I put it at like 25, you can see it looks horrible. And all that is the level of detail that we have in our mesh. So 85 should do it. Again, that's one of those things where if you have too much, it's not worth it. If you don't have enough, then it's gonna look horrible. If it's too much, it'll crash your machine, or at least crash Max. So that's good to always kind of guesstimate low and then bump it up if you need to later. Okay, so there we have that. Now you can see right off the bat, this obviously doesn't look like it does in this scene, because I did some more kind of working with this by hand. So I'm going to really quickly just buzz through this so you can follow along. It's fairly easy stuff, all self-explanatory, so you can watch me as I go, and I'll obviously explain. But I'm not going to go into too much detail for about the next couple minutes. You can just kind of follow along here. But what I'm going to do is scale this up by hand, just like this, and you can see we're getting some funny distortion. So what I'm going to do is bring this up to about 100. So see, that's going to give us a better level of detail. Now we're getting a funny looking thing here. So what I'm going to do is leave it like this, and I'm going to come back and open up my editor once again. And I'm going to start painting in here and just kind of getting a look that I want. as it's scaled here, so we can kind of see what we're dealing with. And you can see we're getting a little better look here as I go. And we don't want too many deep chasms, but at the same time we don't want it too flat on top. Now we can fix this more a little bit later, but right now I just want to kind of even it out just a bit. And you know, that's looking a little better. Now we can kind of deal with it from there. Now, if I look at my mesh here, it's a pretty high poly count. I'm actually going to bring it up a little more to about 125, maybe 130. Yeah, maybe I'll try 135. And again, depending on your mesh, this will be different in the size of your mesh and everything. So that looks okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually change the wire color so we don't have that funny color there. Change it to red. Now we can see our poly count a little better. It's pretty good. What I'm going to do now is convert this to an editable poly. That way I can use I can come into my vertex mode. You can see we've got a ton of vertexes here. And I'm going to close all this here. And we're going to work with a couple different options in our editable poly rollout. The first one we're going to look at is soft selection, which is really, really handy. So I'm going to just grab the soft selection here, and I'm just going to pick one vertex. Now you can see this kind of rainbow color we get. That shows us our fall off. Obviously, I don't know if you watch the weather much, but it's the same kind of concept. What's red will be affected the most, and what's blue will be affected the least. And obviously that gradient there shows you kind of, you know, what level everything will be affected. So I just picked one vertex. I'm going to kind of bring my fall off up a little to about there. And now I'm just going to pull that up. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'll do it there again. Pull that up. And in this way, we're going to fix that kind of uniform flat surface on the top. And so soft selection is really handy for this kind of thing. When you don't want sharp points and stuff like that, you can use this and adjust your fall off. That way you can really get a nice looking custom surface. But so I'm just going to kind of fly through here. And another thing I'm going to do with my soft selection still selected, I'm going to come in, I'm just going to kind of pick these sides here, and I'm going to pull these down a bit. Alright, what's going on? There we go. And choose these ones over here. Okay, and then I'll adjust my fall off just to, well, maybe don't need to. Pull that down a bit. That's going to be underneath the surface, so it's not going to be too noticeable. One thing that I did do on accident in the original scene is, if you look, you can see there is kind of a sharp side. Now, I didn't avoid those well enough because I obviously did that scene for the first time there. So I'm going to avoid that here by making a large fall off, bringing it down, and then making that very, very, very below the water surface. So that way it's just all the nice rounded edges. Now that's looking pretty nice. We can come to our top level now, and you can see we've got you know, a good looking surface there that we can use for an iceberg. Okay, now with that still there, I want to bring this up to about the grid surface, and I'm going to come to this the hierarchy tab here with this still selected, and with the pivot button selected, I'm going to hit affect pivot only, and I'm going to come to probably either any side. I'll go to not top. I'll go to let's say any side, front, back, left, right, anything. And I'm going to select that with my pivot selected, affect pivot only. I'm going to bring my pivot down to the bottom of this mesh, right about there. And then just uncheck that. So now the pivot's down there, and I'm going to zero that out on Z. That way it's right about on our line here. Now the reason for that, go back to perspective view here. You can also hit P on the keyboard, I think. Now the reason to put the pivot on the bottom is because when we animate this down, it's a lot easier to get an accurate animation if the pivot's there. Here, let me show you why. If the pivot's down here, when we animate that down, you can see what happens. It animates from the bottom. Now let me move the pivot back up a bit, and I'll show you then. Whoops. And I'll show you what happens then. Now say we have it in the middle like this. If we scale it, you can see what happens. It scales towards the middle, which is not what we want at all. So I want that pivot on the bottom, which is perfect for our animation purposes here. So now we get that nice. We'll scale this about to where we think it could be. It looks good here. Now one last little tweak I'm going to do to this mesh before we move on is I'm going to come in and I'm going to come back to vertex mode. And I'm going to use the paint deformation right here, and just leave it at original normals. That way it pushes or pulls the vertices based on the original normals, so it'll always go in the direction of that the original normals are facing. Or we could do deformed normals. We don't have any deformations really yet besides the soft selection that we've done. So I'm just going to leave it on original normals for now. Push-pull value, I'm going to put that at like 0.25. Brush size, let's see, that should be okay. I might actually bring this up a bit, let's say 3. And I'm just gonna, and if you hold Control, you can, and Alt, and the different buttons, you can get different results from the deformation. So I'm just kind of getting rid of these edges right now. And just pushing and pulling these, or really just pushing them out of the way here so we don't have those corners. Okay, so you know, it's rough, but for tutorial sake, you know, it looks decent. We're not going for anything film grade here in this tutorial. I just want to show you these techniques so you can do that yourself. But that's better than the hard edges. We won't be seeing this, it'll be under the water. So alright, let's move on. I want to now we're going to come back to our create panel. And this time, it's still in my Dreamscape objects, I'm going to choose Sea Surface. And in my top view, I'm going to just drag out a sea surface. Bring it right about there, should be good. Now at this point, I want to get a good angle in my perspective view on the iceberg. Find a good angle here. That should be good. And I'm going to hit Control C and create a camera. Okay, and I'm going to hit P, come back to perspective. And now you can see we've created a camera from that perspective view. And now, I'm going to, with my sea surface selected, I'm going to, very first thing I'm going to do is choose Adaptive Mesh and then choose my camera. Now that way we get that, we get it automatically adapting to our camera. Now we have some tweaking we have to do. So first thing, length resolution, we'll mess with that later. But width and length I'm going to mess with until I get what I want here. And I'm actually, where are we at here? Oh, right here. I'm going to choose infinite plane. That way it extends to the horizon, and we won't have that problem with having horizon errors and stuff like that. Okay, but I'm going to, with my width a bit, I'm going to make it a bit wider here, and we can come back to our camera now, view, camera 1, kind of move our camera a bit here. And I'm going to choose my mesh and just move that down just below the sea surface there. And now if we render, that's what we see. Nothing spectacular yet. Oop. Okay, at this point what I'm going to do is hit F10 and bring up my render my renderer. Now, I want to set this to final render. I find that working with most Sitney plugins, final render is, probably the easiest to work with, final render, and then just the default scanline render. Mental Ray, I found when it comes to volumetric effects and things like this, is extremely slow. Now, if that's what you have, and you just have Mental Ray, by all means use it. It is an excellent render engine, but I recommend Final Render when working with Sitney plugins. Just because it's fast, you get good results, and everything kind of runs smoothest, I've found, with it. So in my Final Render options, I'm going to just make sure anti-aliasing is on and bring it down to probably, let's say 30. And then everything else should be just fine. And the reason for that is when we use it, it's just gonna show up a lot better. We'll get that right out of the way first. Okay, now I'm gonna hit 8, and that's gonna bring up my environment and effects. Let me bring this over here so you can see it. Resize that. Okay, I'm gonna add a few effects here now. I'm gonna add a FusionWorks renderer. I'm gonna add Now, FusionWorks is what kind of ties volumetrics, Sitney volumetrics, in with the native renderers in Macs, like Final Render, V-Ray, different things like that. So I'm going to add a FusionWorks render, I'm going to add a Dreamscape, and I'm going to add a Dreamscape Subsurface. Now, the Dreamscape is going to be our atmosphere. The Dreamscape Subsurface is going to act as kind of the shader effect for our water. And this is, like I said, just ties everything, like if we use volumetric clouds and stuff like that, ties it in with our native renderers. I always add that, whether or not it's needed. Just whenever I work with Sitney plugins, I always add a FusionWorks renderer. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to come into my Dreamscape effect here. Now, there's a few different things we want to do. One, we want to animate these clouds, so from frame 0 to frame 100, we get kind of a slight animation, because if you, we don't want it too drastic, because if you look in reality, at the real clouds, they don't move very, very fast unless you're in like a hurricane or a tornado or really high winds. Usually, you can't really see clouds move at all in most cases. But since this is, kind of a cartoony looking time lapse, we want a little movement, not anything too drastic. And the way to achieve that is to come into our preview. Oh, that's right. Okay, let me do one thing else first here. I'm going to come back out to my front view here. And actually, I'm going to come to top. Okay, now let's look at where our camera is. Okay, our camera is right here. Now we want the sun, our Dreamscape sun, we don't want it to blow out our terrain. So we want it to be on this side of our terrain from our camera, or very high and over on the sides. Because if we have it over here, it's going to blow out our terrain when we use our snow material. Okay, so I'm going to come to my Create panel, Lights. I'm going to choose Dreamscape, and then the only option there is Sun. So I'm going to come out, and I'm going to position this just like you'd think the sun would be. Come out here, and I bring this way up high, kind of like so. And I think that should do it. Okay, and again, hit 8 to bring up my environment and effects. Roll out here, and come back into Dreamscape. And now I'm going to hit Preview. Okay, and we have this here. Hold on one second. Let me go through these settings first. I'm going to hit Render Daylight. Now all this is covered, I'm pretty sure, in the other Dreamscape tutorial. If not, it should have been. But I'm going to go through it quick here. Okay, for realism, I'm just going to go to Flat Earth. We don't want reddening because we want this to have blue overtones because it's supposed to be kind of cold at first. Once the palm trees pop up and things like that, it gives its own warming effect with the sand and the palm trees and the hammock, so we don't really need to worry about the red or the orangish overtones then. But at the first, we want it to feel cold, so we want it to be kind of blue, so we don't want reddening in the atmosphere. So I'm just going to change that to Flat Earth. Steps, I'm going to change that to 15. You should know what steps are if you work with Macs at all. Sky, I'm going to leave this all at default here. Everything at default. This should all be good. Motion is... I'm actually going to change the motion. I'm going to change the phase to 15. Actually, no. I'm going to animate that. Okay, so I'm going to come and I'm going to turn on auto key, and I'm just going to add a keyframe there, and I'm going to hit end, and then I'm going to animate this up to 15. The reason I know it's 15 is because I did a lot of trial and error with this in the making of this original scene, so I know already what it is. But depending on your scene, you'll have to just tweak and do some trial and error and figure out exactly what it is. Okay, so then I'll hit N again to turn off auto key. Now, what I've just done is I've animated the phase of the fractal map that's used for the creation of the clouds. If you have no clue what I just said, if we come back up here and we see right here, we'll see, you know, we have this map. It's pretty much, in essence, a fractal noise map. So I want to real fast here come out, and I want to grab my sea surface. Or no. Forgive me here, I'm getting myself confused. I'm going in all funny directions here, not really going in order. So we're doing one thing here. Oh, I'm going to turn off simplify for DS terrain. We don't want any simplifications. Our sample rate, we're going to double that to 24. Now, Dreamscape atmospheres render very quickly, so you can use good quality settings, at least with final render, and you'll get very, very good results quick, because I don't know, they seem to render very fast. So I'm going to select this viewport. Let's do a preview. You can see right off the bat it looks really nice. But we don't want so many clouds. If you look at Arctic scenes, usually there's not too many clouds. So we'll keep in mind what we have here. I'm going to bring up my preview. Now, we have, after we did a render, we have this little V. That represents the camera angle. So I'm going to kind of come out here, and I'm just going to bring this. You can see what we get a preview here. I'm just going to move this fractal map around until we get kind of something that we think would be nice. And then we'll do a render preview. Now, it's good to do these atmosphere previews before you get your water shader set up, because the water really bumps up render time a lot. It can take anywhere up to 10 minutes to render a frame with a decent computer. I have a pretty decent machine, and it takes about 5 or 6 minutes to render one of these frames sometimes. Okay, that looks pretty good, and once we phase that through, you'll see if we come to like frame 50, I'll come to, we're going to have a little bit of a difference. We don't want it too drastic, just a little bit. You'll be able to see it phase when you render the final animation. So, alright, that looks pretty decent right now. You can do some tweakings yourself, but if you do this here, you can kind of just get the results you want based on this fractal map here. Okay, that looks good. Now, subsurface. This is going to act as our kind of our effect for our water shader. So let's get into that right now. I'm just going to bring up my material editor. Now, I had all the materials already set up, but here I'm going to redo them right from scratch. So I'm just going to, with this first slot selected, I'm going to go into choose material. I'm going to choose Dreamscape Sea material. Okay, and then with that selected, you'll see we have some options down here. Everything's pretty good at default. I'm going to tick blurry reflections. I'm going to leave self-reflect and refract unticked because it'll just bump up render time. You can do that if you want. It's really not too necessary. Alright, I'm going to apply shadows. All this is pretty self-explanatory here. Okay, and then in our underwater color, I'm going to choose Dreamscape Subsurface. And now when we bring up our effects again, you can see we have our Dreamscape Subsurface effect. And now we have pretty much what we've done is we've added subsurface scattering to our shader. But we control all the parameters and all the options for the subsurf in this rollout. Which is a really good way to work, and I'm glad they set it up this way rather than having a subsurf shader over here that you have to deal with. It's just easier and it's a little more logical to have it as a render effect over here. So sea level and all that, we'll do a render preview really fast, actually right now, just so you can kind of see what we're dealing with. You can see it hasn't changed, probably because I haven't applied the material. There we go. Now we'll see what we're dealing with. Now you can see, you're going to see already the render time doesn't really jump up too bad yet until it hits the reflections. That's because we haven't really done too much with our colors and stuff like that just yet. And also we need to do some tweaking in our sea surface. So it's looking all right, I guess. If you like this sort of thing, but we're gonna make it look better. I'm gonna just select my surface here, and I'm gonna come into its parameters. Now, with our width resolution, I'm gonna really bump this. Actually, I'm gonna bring it down here. Well, yeah. The reason I'm going to bring it down is because we're dealing with something that's supposed to be very large. You can see now, if I render this iceberg is supposed to be very, very big. And now you can see when we bring our resolution down, it makes the waves look smaller, and it makes this look bigger. And we're just kind of like, we're just faking kind of immensity. When it's actually, in fact, a small-scale scene. We're faking that it's large. We're going to do some other things here, like grid detail. I'm going to bump that up to 10. And, or maybe not. Let me bring that down to 7. Alright, and we'll leave all that other stuff at default for now. We'll mess with our resolution a little more. Alright, and at this point when it comes to our mesh there, it's just doing the little tweaks that make it look the way we want it to. Now you can see we've got a little better result there with the way our water looks. Now you can also see what I was mentioning earlier. Right here we have some banding and some error in our horizon. Now the reason for that is the interaction of our sky with our water. The more detail you have in your water, the more errors you're going to get like this in your horizon. Now, I think if we move our subsurf up, that might take care of it a little bit or make it worse in our stack here. Let's see what it does. It doesn't change anything. So what I'm going to do is the way I fixed it in the original scene is I'm just going to take my camera and just reposition the camera and kind of get that where we need it to be. For some reason, when we get a certain view on our water, it gives our horizon problems. So now we'll see if it got better or worse. And depending on, it's all trial and error. Depending on, see, it got a lot worse. Okay, so cancel the render and we'll move our camera down. I'm going to zoom right in on it and then move it down here. Almost right against the water, and then we'll render it, and you can see probably now it's about fixed. A little better, and just again, just little tweaks and stuff like that. We'll make it, we'll get rid of that, and also you could get around that by adding, other elements in the scene back there. We've got a pretty bland scene right here, so. But anyway, cancel this render. And we'll move forward. That's pretty decent for our shader on our water. However, I'm going to grab my terrain and I'm going to scale this a little higher. And I'm just going to bring that up. And this is going to help out our horizon as well. And then bring this guy back. This is going to give us more of a kind of a fake scale again. Should be a little better. We'll see what we've got now. Okay, that looks a little nicer. We've still got that in the background, but like I said, tweak your camera position to get rid of that. it can be a lot of tweaking, very time consuming. So I'm not going to really go too deep into it. You can see now our render time has gotten longer because our waves are beginning to get smaller. More detail equals higher render times. So okay, cancel this, and we're going to move on. Now let's work on our shader for our mountain here, our iceberg. So we'll grab a new material slot. I'm I'm not using the Dreamscape terrain material. I'm going to use a final render dirt material, actually. And I'm going to come into it, and I'm going to start adding some different properties here. I'm going to leave this all at default. I'm going to come into my clean, and I'm going to change everything to just bright, pure white. It already is. Specular, bright, pure white. I'm going to add some self-illumination. Probably 80. Maybe even change it to color. That should be alright. Specular, bring it up and kind of sharpen the curve a bit. Just a smidgen. And I'm going to come into my dirt material. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make everything bright white, except for the dirt material, I'm going to make it flat white. So it'll be kind of like snow in the crevices and creases of the iceberg. So we'll have kind of an icy feel of where the clean material would be, and then in all the crevices and the cracks and the edges and things like that, there's going to be like this flat white material that looks like snow. So there's going to be no self-illumination, 100% opacity, everything's here, and no specularity. So just flat white. And I'm going to apply this material, and we'll take a test render. We'll see what it looks like. It's going to be heavy render times, I'm pretty sure, because of the self-illumination. So you can see it's really bright and just right in your face, as snow would be. It's going to really heighten our render times with the water and different things like that. So we'll let this go a bit and see. We might cancel this and come back into our clean and actually change that to do a test. A little too gray now. And again, just tweaking around with this will get you the settings that you need. So we'll come real quick back in again. And again, depending on, you know, your scene, and every scene is specific and different when it comes to this. I'm going to change my samples to 32. Give us some nicer rendering. Make sure we've got everything here set up nice and right. Change our specular. Maybe give this a little bit of specularity, a rounder curve, a little bit of self-illumination. And also, in our clean material, we're going to lower the opacity, maybe to 95. I'll give it that opaque, icy looking feel. And also, maybe we'll even come into our specularity, or our specular color, and make it kind of blue. And we'll, just to be safe, apply the material one more time, take a test. And we're not going to go through getting the shader perfect. If you want the shader, maybe send me an email, and I could send you the shader, or maybe I can put it up for download or something. But anyway, that looks good there for the tutorial. I'm not going to go too far because of time. Okay, next one. We're going to make the sand material. Same material. We're going to use the final render dirt. It's probably one of my favorite shaders, probably ever. It's a really, really nice material. Okay, diffuse color. Make it a cartoony looking sand color here. Kind of just tweak around the settings here. Okay. We'll come up our dirt here. We'll change that to and that should be okay. We're not going to apply this to anything just yet because we're going to add a new material slot. Then we're going to grab a blend. Okay, and then for material 1, we're going to use our snow. We're going to instance it. We're going to instance also material 2. Let's really quick, just to be safe here, rename these guys. We'll call this one snow, and we'll call this one sand. Alright, and okay, so now what we want to do is our mix amount. You can see what it looks like at 0. If we change it to 100, it's going to be completely our sand material. So we want to animate that, not over time uniformly from 0 to 100, because we don't want it to slowly morph. As you can see in the scene we have here, it doesn't morph over the entire span. It morphs as it gets to a certain point. Okay, so what we want to do really fast now is animate our mesh. So we'll bring up our scale, and we'll go to frame 0, hit N to turn on auto key, and just set a key here. We'll maybe tweak this a bit. With our right mesh here selected, we'll tweak it where it looks okay at the first. And then we'll hit end, come to the last frame. We'll animate this down flat, like it would be an island. Really simple technique here. Okay. And then we'll just hit end, turn off auto key. Now I can see something here. One of the reasons we're getting our arrow on the horizon, I can see why right here. So I'm going to select that and make this little tweak here while I see it. Really bring my length out more there. Maybe bring it down a bit. Like I said, not too much and not too little. You just want it just right. So that should be all right now. Okay, and now if we won't be able to really see it in real time, but if we kind of let this play through, you can see we've got this animation. There it goes. Okay, we want the sand to the snow to animate into sand probably from frame 40 to frame 60. So I'll come to frame 40. I'm going to turn on, first bring up my material editor. Hope we don't crash here. Alright, bring up my material editor. Now I'm going to, with my blend here, I'm going to zero that out. Turn on auto key by hitting N on the keyboard. And just create a keyframe here and then go to frame 60. And then change the blend amount to 100. Or actually, let's try frame 70. Yeah, that's a little better. We'll change the frame or the blend rate to 100, which is going to give us our sand material. Hit N on the keyboard, turn off auto key. Alright, now you can see as it goes, it animates from white to brown, which is exactly what we want. Okay, pretty simple. If we render here, you can see our sand material. It should look fine. I don't see why it wouldn't. Except it's not completely our sand material because we haven't applied that. So I will apply this material. And I'm going to save at this point. So save, and I'll just say Iceberg tutorial, and then we'll do a test render. Should look just fine. And we're going for more of a cartoony DreamWorks type look, so this is looking okay at this point. Kind of a really occluded, bright scene. Alright, now we get to the fun part. I'm going to come to about frame 75. And I have a palm tree model that I've downloaded. Now there's a really nice website called 3D Archive, I think. But there's thousands and thousands of free models, and that's usually where I get my models from. I'm not really a big modeler. I kind of very horrible at it, as you could tell from this tutorial and probably my other ones as well. So I usually, if I can, have someone else make me a model, or I download them. Very rarely do I model things myself, unless it'll be for 3D Ocean that's coming out soon. But so I'm going to grab my palm tree. I think this is the right one here, and I'm just gonna, I have it on my desktop, so I'm just gonna drag it into here and bring it out and kind of place it some random spot here. Zoom into it, make sure I've got the right one here. Hit Z. Bring up another perspective view so I can. I'm gonna scale it up. Yep, that'll work. Alright. And I'm going to first position this where I want it to be. This can get pretty tedious when it comes to animating and stuff like that. You have to really like it to be able to do it. So if you get frustrated with animation, don't worry, you're not alone. Everybody gets frustrated with animation at some point. Even top animators, though they might not admit it, they get frustrated sometimes too. So don't let them fool you. Okay, so anyway, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I have the right palm tree here. I don't think I do, actually. I have a textured and a non-textured one, and I don't think this is the right one. Oh, yep, it is. Never mind. Okay, that's good. What I'm going to do now is just look at my view here and kind of just rotate this tree around first. I'll make sure I have the whole object grouped. The things that I'm assuming you know how to do, I just speed through, like grouping and things like that. Okay, so I'm just going to position this to my initial point that I want it to be, really to the end point that I want it to be, the way I want it to look when it finishes. So, kind of. Now, when it comes to rotating things, it's always good to have it on local, especially if you're animating. So let's get this in position here, and we'll maybe move it like so. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is in my top view, I'm going to hold shift and drag this over here. We'll copy it. And we will change this direction. Maybe scale this one up a little bigger. Alright, that's how we want it to end up. It's just like this, or around there. Now this is a really simple animation. So this is obviously, you know, not the normal scenario you would take in animating a scene. Real quick, what I want to do is grab my orbit tool here, and I want to orbit my camera down, not quite that much. About there should do it. Alright. I'm going to change my length to about 2500 on my C-train because we're really getting some really bad artifacting in our horizon. Maybe even 3000. And let's do a test render just to see what we've got. And now you can see when we changed the length of our water, it cleared up our horizon troubles totally. Now we don't have those problems there at all. And we have some really cool composition here with the water really close up here. And you can see our reflections. And we're getting somewhere anyway. This isn't going to be as nice as it was in the final result because it's a tutorial. I want you guys to take this your own direction and not carbon copy it. So we're going to go, I'm going to really quick animate the trees, and we're going to call this one. And hopefully you learned something so far. If not, well, sorry. But anyway, you can kind of see what we're dealing with here. We'll cancel this. And I'm going to save. All right, now, remember frame 75. So what I'm going to do is select this. I'm going to change my pivot point again. So I'm going to go Hierarchy, Effect Pivot Only, and then I'm going to change this to Local. And I'm going to move the pivot down to the bottom of the tree. Now again, because just for ease of animation and stuff like that, I want it to be right at the base of this tree. So we'll put the pivot as close as we possibly can get it to the base of the tree there. That looks good. We'll do the same for the other tree. Effect Pivot Only. Bring that guy down. Get right in here and do this here. That looks alright. Okay, now the reason that's important is now when we animate these trees, they're going to animate from the stump. Turn that off. Okay, now, so frame 75. We want these trees at this point to be tiny, to be totally small. So I'm just going to grab my scale tool and I'm going to turn on auto key and I'm going to scale this thing down so you can't even see it. Really tiny. That's good. And I'm going to maybe, let's say, 5 or 6 frames, maybe 7. And I'm going to scale it up. And I'm going to oversize it because we want to do kind of an interesting cartoony animation technique here, which is squash and stretch. So when it hits the end of the animation, we want it to be oversized. And then we'll go ahead probably 4 more frames forward and we'll bring it down to the normal size. That's going to give it a really nice cartoony look. And now you're going to notice right off the bat again we're messed up here on our pivot point, which is why we just go like this. We'll say we'll go to frame 75. Okay. And we'll go through this frame by frame stuff we have to do here when we hand animate. So let me come in here. Getting some slowdown because of the screen capture and the poly count here, but we'll deal with that. So we just kind of watch. See where we want to come to about here, I would say. I'm going to change the end keyframe on my terrain to end at about 80. That way, we can keep our tree on the ground because we won't have our terrain animating the entire time. So let me bring this tree down. We'll just move everything down a bit. Okay, now it should be fine. Okay, we'll come to here. That looks good. Alright, now we're going to do the same thing with the other tree. So we'll come to like frame. We'll make this one happen a little bit after the other one. So while that one's oversized, we'll make this one start growing. So first of all, let's get it to where we want the bottom part to be here. Should be about right. And we'll scale this guy way down so you can't even see it. Alright, and then we'll go forward, like we'll wait and we'll watch our other tree there to see when we want it to queue. And that should be about right, and we'll make it come. About that big should be okay. We'll come forward about 3 more frames or so, maybe 4, and we'll bring it down to size. Alright, and then the keyboard turns off auto key. Now there we have our animation of our trees. Alright, that should do it here. One other thing we might want to do is come to our end frame. With our tree selected, one thing to do is to delete the first keyframe and then highlight this keyframe, hold shift and drag it over. That'll copy that keyframe over there. So that way you have it the size that it's supposed to be at the beginning, because if you don't do that, what you'll have is the tree shrinking and then coming back to size. So if you're not careful anyway. So I'll do the same thing with the other tree. There we have it. Okay, so that's pretty much it. A fairly simple process to get a really nice looking result. So I hope you learned something. If not, hey, you didn't need to watch the tutorial. So anyway, this was the climate change tutorial. Trying to think if there's anything else I should cover. The only other thing I added was the hammock. I'll let you guys be creative and add your own things to that. Maybe a little swing to the hammock when it hits the ground and different things like that. But it's fairly simple how I did that. I just animated it down from the top. Simple as that. Okay, so my name is Evan Scheibel with CG Toots Plus, and you have just finished watching the climate change tutorial. I will see you next time.